Alright, question 47. Getting really close to the end now. This question, or this problem, tells us that the number of points scored by a basketball player in the first 8 games of the season are shown below. We have these 8 numbers here. Next, then it says what would happen to the data distribution if she scored 24, 22, 27, and 28 points in her next 4 games. Alright, so a couple things we can do here. If we're looking at the options here, the basic choices we have are either the data is going to become less or more peaked, and for each of those options, it can either become more widely spread or less widely spread. So the peaked, we would be able to tell the peak of the graph by looking at a histogram of the data. Okay, so that means we'll probably want to go back and do a histogram. To find the spread, there's different things we can do here. The best way to measure the spread of a set of data, throughout the year we've said that you could use the range to measure the spread, but when you're dealing with the spread of a set of numbers, the best way to measure spread is what we call the IQR. All right, so if you remember on a box and whisker plot, all right, there are 5 specific points. You have the minimum value, the maximum value, in the very middle is the median, and then you have these 2 edges of the boxes, Q1 and Q3, the lower quartile and the upper quartile, or the first and third quartiles. The IQR is, if you remember, the distance between those two. So to find that distance, we would do Q3 minus Q1. And whatever that distance is, that is the best measure of spread, because the minimum and maximum could be very big or very low. It could be an outlier, and it wouldn't be as good of a measure of the spread as the IQR is. Okay, the interquartile range is the best. So what we want to do is we want to first look at a histogram of the set of data and then see what it looks like when we add in the new values. And then we want to go back and look at what happens to the spread. So I'm going to first make a histogram. All right, it looks like the lowest total for the points in a game was 15. All right, so I'm going to start this out at 15 points on my x-axis. Remember, you don't have to always start at 0 when you're dealing with histograms. Okay, just start with your lowest value. And I'm going to go up by 5 each time. Okay, so I'm going to go up 15 to 20, 20 to 25. Then this one will be 30, and then finally 35 here, and I'll just add one more on up to 40. Okay. Now generally, the way that totals work is if you have something like 15 and 16, let's say that I had a value that was 20. If it falls right on the line, you put it in the bar that goes to the right side of that line. So in other words, 20 would go in as part of this bar over here. Okay. 15 is obviously going to go in this bar. So I have, let's see how many numbers. Let me first put these in order from smallest to biggest. 15, then 16, then 18, then it looks like 21, then 25, then 30, then 32, and finally 35. Okay? So it looks like I have 3 values, 3 totals that are between 15 and 20, at least 15 and a little less than 20. I have only 1 that is from 21, or from 20 to 25. From 25 to 30, I also only have 1. Okay, remember 25 goes in this next bar over here. 30 wouldn't be included. It goes in the next bar over. From 30 to 35, I have 1, 2. And 35 would go in the 35 to 40 category. Remember, any numbers that fall right on the line have to carry over into the bar on the right. So this one doesn't really look like it has much of a shape. Okay, it does kind of start peaked out over here, but it doesn't really go down by quite a bit. All right. So let's look at this now, and let's see what would happen if we added in these next totals over here. All right. So I'm going to use a different color to represent what these bars would look like next. If we add in 22, 24, 27, and 28, 22 and 24 would go in this column right here between 20 and 25. So that would bring this bar up to here. Okay. If I add in 28, it's going to fall in this bar. So now, even though we had a little bit of a peak over here, now the peak is kind of coming out and sort of stretching here. All right. Now I'm going to draw that curve over, and then I'm going to draw another curve in black to represent the other curve. All right. Or actually, let me use red so you can see it. So the original shape looks something like that. Okay. The new curve looks something like this. Now it says the data distribution would either become more peaked or less peaked. All right, so look at this graph and let's see what we can come up with. it definitely looks like that our value, if you look at the blue here, it's definitely becoming more peak. It's at growing, it's becoming taller in the blue than it was in the red. Okay? Because there are more bars that are that height, so when we try to make a nice curve over top of it, that curve ends up becoming a little bit taller. All right? Is it peaked by a lot more? No, not really at all. Which is probably why this question was thrown out, because it is kind of hard to tell. Is this more peaked or is it less peaked? Okay? Um, so as far as breaking this down, I think that this question was probably thrown out because it is difficult to see a big difference in whether it's peaked or not. But what we could do is look at the IQR because we should be able to tell a difference here. All right. So if you look at this original set, all right, there were 8 numbers. So if you have a set of even numbers, you're not going to have one number in the middle. Remember, to find the median, you just start taking out the biggest and the smallest numbers and working your way in. When you do that, you're actually going to come right in between these two numbers here. You'll have 4 numbers on the left, 4 on the right. So the median is halfway between 21 and 25. Well, what's halfway between 21 and 25? That would be 23. So our median of our original set was 23. So if I wanted to make a box and whisker plot to go with this, let's say we start with 15, then we just have the same sort of deal going, 20, 25, 30, and then all the way up to 35. We're not going to have anything bigger than 35, so I don't have to put 40 on this one. But I do have a median at 23, so that would be somewhere in here. Let me erase this line a little bit. My minimum is going to be at 15, and my maximum will be at 35. Okay. Now, to find Q1 and Q3, the two quartiles here, if you look on, and let me use a different color here, let me go back for a second. If you look to the left side, okay, Q1 is the median of the left side of your data. So there are 4 numbers here, so halfway between the two middle numbers. Again, if it's an even set, so we go halfway between the two middle ones. That Q1 is going to be represented by halfway between 16 and 18, which is 17. So I'm going to put that line on the graph right here. Okay? And while I'm at it, let me go and adjust this just a little bit. I may have put that a little too close to 25 at first. It looked a little more like 24. 23 would be somewhere more right here. All right? Now I'm going to use blue to find my Q3. So I'm going to look to the right side now. And I'm going to find my Q3 is halfway between 30 and 32. Remember, there were 4 numbers. So half of 4 is 2, so I should have 2 on each side of the Q3. And halfway between 30 and 32 is 31. So that means my Q3 ends up here. Now I'm going to draw the box that goes with this box and whisker plot right here. So if you look at this, the IQR is the distance between here and here. Now if it becomes more spread, that box should grow. If it becomes less spread, the box should shrink. Okay? So let me put in these new set of data. 15, 16, 18, 21, then we had 22 points. We also had 24, 25, 27, and 28 are included. And then we end up with 30, let me move this out of the way, 32, and 35. Now we've added 4 more to the original 8, so that's a total of 12. Half of 12 is 6, so I'm looking for 6 on each side. Okay, again, since it's an even number, the median falls between 2 numbers. So it's going to be actually between 24 and 25, and halfway between those is 24.5. Okay. Now, to find Q1 and Q3, remember, we go to the left side to find Q1. All right, we've got 6 numbers over here. Half of 6 is 3. Since it's even, it's going to be 3 on each side. And so Q1 is going to fall halfway between 18 and 21. Well, that's a little harder to tell. So what we do is we add these two numbers up, 18 plus 21. I'll do that right here. That gives me 39. And half of 39, I divide that by 2 to find halfway between the two numbers. And that gives me 19.5. So Q1 is at 19.5. Now Q3 is going to be the median of the top half. Again, there are 6 numbers. Half of 6 is 3, and since it's even, it's going to be 3 on each side. So I go my Q3 is going to be halfway between 28 and 30. So that means Q3 shows up at 29 now. So let me show what this new graph would look like. Okay, so 24.5 is the median, so it's going to be right here, really close to 25. Q1 will now be at 19.5. So that's going to be a little closer to 20, right about here. And then Q3, which I did in blue last time, is now 29, so it's going to be a little more left, all right? And then the minimum and maximum are still at 15 and 35. So now let's look at this IQR. Did the box become more spread or less spread? It definitely became less spread. And we get this spread by looking at the IQR, okay? So again, whether it was peaked or not, that's probably why this question was released and wasn't used on your actual test. They probably thought it wasn't as it was a little too difficult to determine the peak. So I would say I think we decided it was more peaked, but the spread is less. Okay, so that is going to match up with option C here. All right, on your test it'll probably be more obvious whether something is peaked or not, becoming more peaked or less peaked. But the spread is very obvious. Okay, the box in the middle becomes much smaller. As far as width-wise, the IQR shrinks, and so it is less spread out. The answer is C.